Have you ever felt someone drifting away from you, even though nothing obvious had changed? Imagine sitting beside the person you love, the TV humming in the background, but instead of feeling close, the room feels strangely quiet. They're there in body, yet their energy feels miles away. They still smile, they still talk, but deep inside you sense the warmth has dimmed. That's how love often begins to fade, not with arguments or slammed doors, but with silence. The earliest signs aren't dramatic, they're hidden in small moments. A hug that doesn't last as long, a distracted nod when you're speaking, a dinner that feels more like a routine than a shared experience. These subtle shifts whisper what the heart no longer says out loud. This isn't about blame or paranoia, it's about clarity. Because when affection starts to wither, it always leaves clues, in the way someone looks at you, the time they choose to give, or the emotional closeness that once came so naturally. Those clues are quiet, but they're honest. And noticing them can change everything. In this video, we'll explore 5 subtle but powerful signs that love may be slipping away. These signs often appear in marriages, long-term relationships, and even in partnerships that look fine on the surface. By learning to recognize them, you give yourself the gift of awareness, the strength to face what's real instead of questioning your own instincts. Stay until the very end, because one of these signs is so often overlooked, yet it could completely shift how you see your connection. You deserve a love that doesn't just stay, it shows up fully, consistently, and wholeheartedly. And it begins with paying attention to what's really happening beneath the surface. Sign number 1, fading curiosity. Love doesn't usually vanish with a dramatic announcement. More often, it slips away quietly, hidden in the ordinary moments. One of the earliest clues? A loss of genuine curiosity about your life. Think about it. When someone deeply cares, they lean into your stories. They want to know how your day unfolded, what you're worried about, and what little victories made you smile. They ask, they follow up, and they remember. But when love begins to fade, that spark of interest dims. They stop asking how your meeting went, whether you finally tried that new recipe, or what your dreams have been circling around lately. Conversations shrink into shallow exchanges. You speak, but it feels like your words float past them, landing nowhere. Take the story of Lydia and Marcus, together for decades. Lydia loved to share the details of her Daiso, her morning walk smelled of rain, or how the bakery finally perfected her favorite bread. Marcus used to listen with patience and warmth. He'd ask questions, smile, even tease her about her enthusiasm. But over time, that energy faded. Lydia would talk, and Marcus's eyes would stay glued to his phone. Sometimes, he wouldn't respond at all. Slowly, the silence between them grew heavier than any argument ever could. It wasn't that she had changed, it was that his investment in her world had disappeared. When curiosity is gone, what's left is not just quiet, it's distance. You start to feel like a shadow in your own relationship, present but unseen. And here's the hardest truth. People don't stop asking because your life lost value. They stop asking because they've stepped back emotionally. You're no longer the center of their attention, but a voice blending into the background. So if you're noticing that your stories no longer spark questions, that your joys and struggles don't draw interest, it may be time to pause and ask yourself, when did their curiosity about me fade? And what does that silence really mean? Because love rarely disappears with fireworks, it dissolves in the moments when someone stops caring to know who you are becoming. Curiosity in love isn't about the details themselves, it's about connection. When someone asks how you slept, they aren't really checking your rest. They're saying, I want to be close enough to know how you feel. When those small acts of attention vanish, the bond begins to unravel thread by thread. It's not the silence that hurts most, it's the message hidden in it. You're no longer my priority. The absence of curiosity is often the first step toward emotional isolation. A relationship starves without interest, the same way a flame dies without oxygen. Once questions fade, laughter follows, and soon even shared spaces feel colder. Recognizing this sign early isn't about blame, it's about awareness. because only by naming what's missing can you decide whether to fight for repair or to face the truth that the love once present has begun to fade. Sign number 2, when patience wears thin. Love often shows itself not in grand gestures, but in the small spaces where patience lives. When two people care deeply, they give each other room to stumble, repeat themselves, or lean on one another without fear of judgment. But when affection begins to fade, patience is usually the first thing to vanish. The little quirks that once felt endearing begin to feel irritating. Instead of laughter, there are sighs. Instead of gentle reminders, there are sharp tones. Where grace once lived, annoyance quietly takes its place. Think of Samuel and Rosa. Samuel used to find Rosa's tendency to hum absent-mindedly while cooking a dorblet was background music to his evenings. But over time, that same hum became something he snapped at. "Can you please stop that?" he'd bark, while she stirred in silence. The hum didn't change. What changed was how he saw her, and more importantly, how he felt toward her. That's the painful truth about fading love. It doesn't always show up as cruelty. Sometimes it appears as impatience over things that never used to matter. Asking a harmless question about dinner plans suddenly feels like a burden to the other person. Forgetting a small detail is no longer brushed off, but met with eye rolls or clipped replies. Imagine sitting across the table from someone you've shared years with. You spill a little soup, laugh nervously, and wait for the playful grin that used to follow. Instead, there's a heavy sigh, eyes rolling toward the ceiling. The room feels colder, not because of the spill, but because of the absence of warmth. That's what fading patience looks. Looks like it turns ordinary human moments into silent reminders that the love between you is shifting. Patience is a form of love. It says, "I see your flaws, but I choose kindness anyway." When patience disappears, it often signals that the emotional investment is unraveling. The partner you once felt safe with now feels like someone you're inconveniencing, even when you're doing nothing wrong. When patience fades, you begin to question yourself in ways you never used to. You wonder if you're too needy, too forgetful, or simply too much. But it isn't really about you changing, it's about them stepping back emotionally. Love gives space for imperfection, while distance magnifies every little misstep. The shift is subtle, but it leaves a heavy mark. A slammed cupboard here, a dismissive tone there, and soon the relationship feels like walking through a minefield. Recognizing decreased patience for what it is, a symptom of emotional withdrawal, allows you to stop blaming yourself and instead face the reality. Patience isn't just politeness, it's love in action. And when it's gone, something deeper is missing too. If you've ever felt this shift, the sighs, the sharp tones, the growing silence, don't sweep it under the rug. Acknowledge it, reflect on it, and decide what it means for you. And if this resonates, share your thoughts below or comment number 2 so we can keep uncovering these hidden signs of fading love together. Sign number 3. When conversations turn into echoes. Imagine standing in a room with someone you love, speaking from your heart, but the words bounce back like echoes against stone walls. They nod, they hum, maybe even smile faintly, but the warmth of real listening is gone. You walk away wondering if you were heard at all or if your voice has become background noise in their world. In healthy love, conversations feel alive. Even the smallest talks about the day's weather, a funny story, or dreams for the future carry a rhythm that keeps two hearts connected. But when love begins to slip away, words lose their weight. Replies turn shorter, eye contact breaks quicker, and moments that used to spark laughter now pass in heavy silence. Take Amira and Joseph, for example. Amira loved telling Joseph about her plans for the garden, how she wanted roses by the gate and mint by the kitchen. Joseph used to listen intently, even sketching little designs for her ideas. But lately, when she talks, his gaze drifts to his phone. His responses are clipped, "Yeah, okay, if you want." For Amira, it's not just about the garden. It's about the fading bridge between their worlds. When love is alive, listening is effortless. When it fades, listening becomes a chore. and the silence that follows is often louder than any fight. Over time, this silence builds invisible walls. The more one person stops listening, the more the other stops sharing. Soon, the house feels full of words, unspoken thoughts, fears, and joys that never make it past the heart. That distance doesn't happen all at once. It grows quietly, the way rust eats through metal until something once strong begins to crack. And the tragedy is, many couples mistake this silence for peace. They tell themselves, "At least we're not fighting." But love doesn't just die in storms, sometimes it dies in stillness. Not with shouting, but with shrinking. Not with a breakup text, but with the slow erosion of attention and care. If you've ever felt like your words were slipping into emptiness instead of being cherished, know you're not alone. Stay with me as we uncover more of these hidden signs of fading love. And if you find these insights meaningful, don't just watch it, subscribe and be part of this journey so you never miss the lessons your heart needs. Sign number 4, emotional withholding. Emotional withholding rarely arrives with a bang. It slips in quietly, unnoticed at first. Conversations that were once rich with honesty begin to thin out, replaced by short replies and surface-level chatter. The little details, dreams, worries, frustrations that once bonded two people start to disappear, leaving behind a silence that feels heavier than words. Here's the truth. When a partner begins to hold back emotionally, it isn't always because they've stopped caring, it's often because they've stopped trusting the relationship as a safe place. Sometimes it comes from fear of judgment, sometimes from pride, and other times from the quiet belief that their feelings won't be understood. But regardless of the reason, the result is the same distance grows where closeness once lived, and intimacy is replaced by silence. Linda had been married to Mark in Ohio for nearly 30 years when she began to notice this shift. Mark had always leaned on her, whether it was stress from his job, concern over their children, or even his private fear of aging. But slowly, he stopped opening up. When his brother was diagnosed with cancer, Linda didn't learn about it until days later. When she asked why, Mark told her he didn't want to upset her, but she could feel the truth pressing between them. He had stopped letting her in. Sitting beside him at dinner, she realized she was no longer his confidant, but simply a companion to his silence. That's what makes emotional withholding so painfully, transforms a relationship into something that looks whole from the outside, but feels broken on the inside. The routines continue, the gestures remain, but the closeness is gone. What hurts most isn't just the lack of conversation, but the loss of trust, the knowledge that the person you love no longer sees you as the one they can turn to when life feels heavy. And if left unspoken, that silence can become the greatest distance of all. What's even more heartbreaking is how normal it can look to others. Friends still saw Linda and Mark at community gatherings, smiling and standing side by side. Their children still came home to find dinner on the table and laughter sprinkled into the evening. But Linda felt the difference every night when she lay next to a man whose body was present but whose heart was locked away. It was like living with a ghost, someone who was there in form but unreachable in spirit. This kind of distance leaves scars that aren't easily seen but are deeply felt. Linda often said the silence was worse than any argument they had ever had, because at least fighting meant he was willing to share what he felt. Withholding meant he had already retreated inside himself. And that is the danger of emotional distance. If it isn't faced, it grows until two people wake up one day and realize they've been living side by side, but not truly together, for years. Sign number 5, physical withdrawal. When emotional closeness begins to fade, the body often follows. The little gestures that once felt so natural, the hand on your back as you walk through a doorway, the kiss on the forehead for no reason, the way their eyes lingered on yours slowly begin to disappear. You start to notice the absence of what used to be second nature, and it feels as though the love itself has stepped back. Here's truth. The human body keeps score of love's presence just as much as the heart does. A soft touch, a held hand, or a simple brush on the shoulder carries unspoken meaning, and when that quiet language begins to vanish, the silence it leaves behind is deafening. It's not only about missing the gestures, it's about missing the comfort and safety they once brought. Physical closeness, for many couples, is where unspoken love is kept alive. So when that vanishes, it doesn't just feel lonely. It feels like the love has physically stepped back. Martin and Alice had been married for 45 years, and for most of their marriage, affection had been their unspoken language. They held hands during evening walks, exchanged playful touches in the kitchen, and Martin never went to sleep without kissing Alice goodnight. But after his retirement, something shifted. Martin grew quieter, more distant. He began turning away from her in bed. When Alice reached for his hand on the couch, he gently pulled his away, almost without realizing. The touches that once reassured her of their bond vanished, leaving her unsure of where she stood. And with time, Alice stopped reaching out too, not because she no longer loved him, but because she feared the rejection more than the silence. That's the painful truth of physical withdrawal. Touch is more than passion, it is presence. It is the reassurance that even without words, you are wanted. When that disappears, the absence speaks louder than anything else. A house can remain full, the routines can stay the same, but if touch is missing, so is the warmth that makes a relationship feel alive. What makes this distance even harder is how invisible it looks to outsiders. To friends, Martin and Alice were still the picture of a long-lasting marriage. They sat side by side at church, attended family gatherings, and carried on as though nothing had changed. But Alice knew different. The warmth was gone. The space between them on the couch, the lack of an arm around her shoulders, the way he flinched ever so slightly when she leaned in, those were the real cracks no one else could see. Physical withdrawal isn't always about romance more often, it's about connection. It's a silent language that says, "I'm still here with you." When it fades, love begins to feel uncertain, as though it's slipping through your hands without explanation. And unless it's confronted, the gap grows wider, until one day you realize you've stopped reaching for each other altogether. If you've felt this kind of distance, you know how deeply it cuts. The body tells the truth long before the words do. And sometimes, noticing that truth is the first step to deciding what happens next, whether to fight for closeness again, or to face the reality of what's already slipping away. If this speaks to your heart, drop number 5 in the comments. Your story might help someone else find the courage to face theirs. Love doesn't end in a single moment, it fades slowly, through silences, missed touches, and conversations that never happen. And when you begin to notice those shifts, it's not about being dramatic, it's about being honest with yourself. The real power comes in paying attention. When you see the signs clearly, you stop blaming yourself for the distance and start understanding what's truly happening. That clarity gives you strength. It allows you to decide whether to reach for repair or to release what no longer gives life to your heart. Remember, love should never feel like guesswork. It should feel steady, safe, and real. You deserve connection that doesn't keep you questioning your worth. If today's message spoke to you, share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your perspective. And if this video brought you value, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support keeps us inspired to create more conversations that matter. Take care of yourself and never settle for a love that doesn't show up.